there's so much new COVID-19 information circulating. We're here to help make sense of it all. Our medical expert, Dr. Payal Kohli, joining us live. Good morning, Doc. So first, we want you to weigh in on Johnson & Johnson delaying their vaccine trial. And we mentioned earlier they paused their clinical trials for a COVID-19 vaccine after a participant developed an unexplained illness. So, Dr. Kohli, how common is it for something like this to happen during a vaccine trial?
Hi, Sam. Hi, Al.
Hey, Doc.
So I have to say that it is common to have these kind of conditions happen during a clinical trial. What is not common, what I found was really weird and cryptic, was why they called it an unexplained illness, because that almost makes it sound worse. Usually what we call these types of occurrences are adverse events. And adverse events happen all the time. They happen in our everyday life. We have car accidents, we get sick, we get into the hospital. If it happens to us when we're in a clinical trial, they usually pause the study to try to see if it might be related to the clinical trial intervention, in this case the vaccine, or if the person got the placebo. So I'm not discouraged at all by the fact that this occurred. In fact, I'm really optimistic about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine because it's a 1-dose only rather than a 2-dose regimen.
All right, Doc. Well, right now, antibody therapy, which is what the president received early on in his illness, is showing a lot of promise in treating COVID-19. But it's one of the most expensive types of therapy in all of medicine, So, Doc, why is that, and how will therapies like antibodies ever be affordable to the average person?
So antibody therapy is really, really cool. We've used it in things like autoimmune conditions, cancer, even in treating high cholesterol. And what's so great about antibody therapies is that they're very targeted proteins. So they go exactly where they're supposed to and have very few side effects. Now, the downside of antibody therapies, it's really expensive to make because you actually need genetically engineered mice to make these antibodies in the lab. And it's really expensive to administer because they have to be given through injection. You can't really take an antibody tablet. So because of that, greater than 80% of antibody therapy is only used in Europe, US, and Canada, and very few antibody therapies are used currently in the third world or in low-income countries. So I'd be really surprised if this therapy became accessible to the common person because it is extremely expensive.
Interesting. So lastly, we're learning that a 25-year-old man in Nevada is the first in the U.S. to contract COVID-19 twice. So what was his scenario, and what's the likelihood of it happening to anyone else?
So he started having symptoms and tested positive in April. Then his symptoms resolved and he actually tested negative. And then come June, he tested positive again because he had a recurrence of symptoms. And it turns out the second time around, he was exposed to a parent and got a different strain of the virus, and his symptoms were more severe. So a few key takeaways from this. The first is that this is not a common occurrence. It's only so far been reported in 4 people out of all the millions that have been infected, but it can occur. And so really it has implications for the vaccines because it shows us that we may need booster shots year after year, especially if the virus is mutating. And it also shows us that just because you've had it once doesn't mean you're immune. So you have to continue to do those things that we know stop the spread of the virus.
Amen to that. Thank you so much, Dr. Kohli. We appreciate you as always.